Hello, hello, IC healers. Welcome to another Facebook Live. I know you guys love these, and I do too, because I love bringing these special guests because it really opens your eyes to different perspectives, or maybe you realize that I actually do know what I'm talking about. So my name is Dr. Mandy LaGreca, and those of you who know me, I am the owner and founder of IC Healer, and I'm here with Dr. Haley, whom I had the pleasure of meeting a few years ago when I first stumbled upon this wonderful nutritional food, may I call it. Anyway, so this is about aloe. And I know those of you who are listening right now are very avid aloe users. Many of you are using Desert Harvest. Desert Harvest produces an aloe vera product specifically for bladder. And people with IC. And I know many of you also drink aloe vera. You buy it at the grocery store. It's very readily available. The one thing that I learned from Dr. Haley was, and it was actually a YouTube video that I ran across with somebody who had colon cancer, Chris, I think his name is. And I don't remember his last name, but he had colon cancer, and he talked very highly of aloe. This aloe, not just aloe in general, but Stockton aloe vera for his healing. And as those of you who know about colon cancer, it's a very, 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 when it gets you good, and it takes you out really fast. Let's put it that way. So for him to be able to beat that with his therapies, and he claimed that he was using a pretty high dose of this product. And so that attracted me to it because I was having a lot of digestive problems, and I felt like this might be something that would help me tremendously. So I started using it, and I absolutely fell in love with it, although I'm not in love with that process of drinking it, I'm going to be honest. I'm still trying to get used to that, but I do love the results. It's kind of like exercise, Dr. Haley, right? You love the results, but you don't like doing it.
I remember when I was first introduced to this product, and actually the person that ran the company at the time didn't quite have all of the equipment that we have in place to get it processed quickly and get it frozen quickly. And the taste back then was worse than it is now. It's not delicious. The texture isn't something that people look forward to, kind of like okra. Some people don't like okra because it's slimy. It takes getting used to. But back in the day, I actually used to hold my nose when I drank it.
Oh.
Now, you don't have to do that now because a lot of that aroma has been changed and improved because we get it processed and we get it frozen much faster, and the processing is minimal. You know this. It's not processing like chemical processing and lots of machinery. It's hand cutting. It's it's just it's stainless steel knives on stainless steel tables, going through a grinder, going through stainless steel pipe that has cold liquid on the outside that makes it cold. Then it goes into the containers that go into the freezer, and that's it. But the faster we make all of that happen, the better the quality of the product. So it's way better than it was a decade ago when I had taken over.
I'm glad to hear that. And honestly, for me, and the other thing is I freeze it. And so sometimes I get impatient and I don't wait for the clumps to kind of unfreeze. And so I end up getting these clumps that I'm kind of like, oops, yep, I should have let that defrost. But we'll talk about all the storages and things in a moment. But I want to tell you guys that I actually had an interview with Dr. Haley 2 years ago, and that was when I was National Health Achiever. So if you guys see that, it's probably still on YouTube somewhere. But I have a whole new, I branded everything. I'm IC Healer. I have a brand new, Instagram page, YouTube page. And so now that's why we're revisiting this because, now I've graduated. So I'm Dr. Mandy. And I wanted to also, revisit the aloe because it was something that I was really pushing hard in the beginning when I first got, and it just kind of, just kind of got busy, and I was like, we got to revisit this because I noticed that when I was using it, my hair, my face, everything was brighter. I felt younger. And so, and I kind of slowed down on my drinking of it. So I'm going to be ordering another 8-pack very soon here. But I wanted to, before we get started, let's talk about the history of this Stockton aloe, because it was very interesting how you came across this and how you started this. So tell the listeners how it all started for you.
Back in 1995, I was a chiropractor in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This guy, Rodney Stockton, came in the office, and he would bring a jug just like the same ones that we have today. And, every now and then he'd bring one to me and tell me that I had to put all my patience on it. And I didn't quite get it at the time. I didn't know nearly as much about nutrition and the importance of it as I did then, and especially superfoods such as aloe vera. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how much impact they can have on someone's health. Well, fast forward some time, I went sailing and I had a bad experience. I didn't know what I was doing, and I tried to pull up a sail, look at the captain, like, what do I do now? And I was supposed to lock it down, but I didn't know that. And as the wind filled up the sail, I tried to hold on to it. And as the rope ripped through my hands, I could feel my skin melting and literally tightening up. Rodney Stockton said, no problem, just put this aloe cream on it, you'll be fine in a few days. And, I'm a chiropractor with my hands all bandaged up, but slathered in this aloe vera topical for my hands. And I remember taking the bandages off and looking at my hands a few days later and just thinking, oh my goodness, they look better now than they did before the injuries. It was like I had brand new, healthy, healed skin. Wow. Absolutely amazed. And that's when I really started taking a look at the aloe vera. I had put some of my patients on it, including one that had a very bad cancer, the worst kind that you could get, so to speak. It was a stage 4 pancreatic. Yeah. And, fast forward, we're more than a decade later, she's still alive. She's probably not using aloe vera anymore, probably continuing on with her healthy way of living. But that was one of the keys, one of the key changes we made for her, because of all the anti-cancer benefits that it has. Well, I started seeing the benefit of this, and I had patients on it that were, telling me wonderful things about it. And Rodney Stockton died. 96 years old. Wow. He had a heart attack. He was working that day. And in fact, I remember talking to his former wife, who said, yeah, I just talked to him an hour earlier, and he was, taking orders, and he had a heart attack. He passed. And all of a sudden, the aloe supply was in jeopardy. And one day she said, Dr. Haley, I need some help. Can you, something's wrong with the company. It's, struggling. Can you help me? And we took a look at it, and we kind of rescued the company. I had no intention of being in the aloe business, but I certainly didn't want this product to go away. It was a necessary thing. And I saw myself being the only one that was going to resurrect the company and keep things together. So we, flew to the farm, and we took videos and, recorded everything and said, okay, how could we make it better? And how could we create a better, sustainable business model? So in a sense, that's the, what we had done with it. In 10 years, we took over the product, we took over the pricing structure, we improved the product, kept the prices the same, and actually created volume discounts. So even now, more than 10 years later, the prices are still the same, only there's an option to pay less for them by getting bulk discounts.
Yes, I do.
And it's a better product.
Yeah.
Now, we have to talk about what's so different, what's so magical about aloe vera, and why this particular product instead of all the others.
Yeah, we do. But before we do, tell us about that man, Dr. Mr. Stockton. Was he a doctor?
Well, he a PhD.
Okay, so
yeah. So yes.
How did he look to you? Because that was what really struck me. As a female, my ears were listening.
Yeah, the most amazing thing, when I met him, I guess he was in his 80s, and he looked incredible. But there's way more to this story. And I remember I went to see him when he was on his deathbed, hooked up to, life support. His brain was dead, his body was still alive. And I remember looking at him on the bed there, and I grabbed onto his ankles, because usually the furthest part from the heart is where all the swelling happens, and you're all, the black and bluing and the bruising. And he had this, plump, healthy, white, very young looking skin on his ankles and on his feet at the, furthest parts that usually turn ugly the fastest. Not on him. Well, what's really interesting, as we took over this particular brand, oh man, there's so much more to go into. But I went through all of the literature, and I found this picture of him from 1958. And what I couldn't believe was that was when he was brand new in it, and he looked like he did when he was old. He looked horrible for his age. when he was in his late 40s.
Yeah.
I said, oh my goodness, he looks like he's 60 or 70. But then in his 80s, he looked like he was 60 or 70.
No wonder he got into this. He's like, I gotta slow down the aging process.
Well, he got into it much like I did, in the sense that he had he came to Florida for vacation and got tremendously sunburned. And, this Indian medicine doctor said, well, put aloe vera on it. And he got incredible, ridiculous results and said, wow, I have to study this. And he made it his, life research to study aloe vera, not only topically, but learned about ingesting it, and realized that he had people that were getting well from cancers, people that medicine had failed. I started going through these testimonials, and this is crazy because when I took over, the first thing I said was, we're getting out of the cancer industry. Because I have a wonderful product and I don't want to be shut down. But I realize I still have to talk about I'll say it now. Aloe is not a cure for cancer, but there's reasons why if you had cancer, you would want to take it. So I followed up on these testimonials. There was Maxine Tracy, actually, she was the first one. And when I called, I spoke to her family. She had passed on. About 35 years after her stage 4 colon cancer diagnosis, that she was given about 2 weeks left to live after medicine had failed. But I did come across a video of her telling this story about 30 years later. And when asked, when did you start to feel better? I remember her pausing and kind of like, I think it was immediately, because I started feeling better immediately. I think it started working immediately. And it was just so authentic and so real. When I spoke to her family, they said, yeah, Maxine, died of old age at 86, cancer-free. And they said that aloe saved her life. Now, what did Rodney do when medicine failed and said you have 2 weeks left to live? He didn't say change your life, change your diet. He said drink 3 glasses of aloe vera a day. That was it. Now, again, it's not a cure, but for some reason, it seemed to help her body do what it needs to do. And I followed up on more testimonials, most of them which were still alive today. And I spoke to them, they said that aloe vera, saved my life. I wouldn't be here today without it. I remember one in particular where the person that had brain tumors had passed on. He also given a couple weeks left to live, but I spoke to his son. He said, yeah, that aloe vera saved my dad. He lived another 10 years, died of old age in his 80s of a broken heart because his wife had passed, my mom. He said, but not only did that help my father when my sister got cancer, I said, well, take the aloe vera, help dad. What do you got to lose? And it saved her. It's like, wow. Okay. So I started digging into it and I realized, wait a second, there's actually scientific research to validate this and back it all up. At the time, I was thinking, we all know aloe vera is good for the skin. We all know it's good for the guts. And it's, pretty well accepted that people are using it to control blood sugar levels and diabetes. And they're using it to, help with irritable bowel conditions, which there's 1,000 names from colitis to celiac to acid reflux, GERD. There's so many names for it. But a lot of people with all these inflammatory bowel conditions using aloe.
Yeah.
That was going to be my focus, but I realized I have to talk about cancer. There's research that shows it causes your immune cells, the white blood cells, to the macrophages to secrete more tumor necrosis factor, interferons, interleukins. There was a chemotherapy company that I guess they funded a research with 240 stage 4 patients. Half of the group got 1 ounce of aloe vera a day with their chemotherapy.
How much is an ounce now? Cups?
Well, yeah, 1 ounce a day, 2 tablespoons a day.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
And the group that got the aloe compared to and remember, this is a good sized group, 240 patients, half of them getting such a small amount of aloe vera, because remember, Rodney was telling his patients to drink 3 cups, full glasses.
Yeah.
24 ounces a day, much more. The group that got the 1 ounce a day had more than 3 times the complete result. Wow. there was another research on it that essentially realized they studied the sugar molecule of aloe vera. What do we mean sugar? Well, isn't sugar bad, especially if you have cancer? And, why are diabetics taking aloe vera if it's full of sugar? The aloe vera has mucopolysaccharides. And it's funny because they're actually not counted as carbohydrates for their caloric content, much like sugar alcohols in a sense. The sugar molecule, a carbohydrate is a bunch of sugar molecules joined together. And if we really get complex, we get a complex carbohydrate. And we super complex that, we get these mucopolysaccharides. The mucopolysaccharides in aloe, the sugar molecule that makes them up is mannose. So they studied the mannose and found out that when it came to cancer cells, these cancer cells were having a hard time consuming the mannose. They can latch onto it, but couldn't digest it, and had a hard time releasing it. So because they couldn't digest it and couldn't release it, they would starve because they couldn't eat the glucose now.
Oh, it blocked their glucose consumption.
Yes. It's funny because the chemotherapy conclusion is that our chemotherapy works when you use it with aloe vera. Oh. Okay.
So they're synergistic.
Well, if you think about it, chemotherapy does have a killing effect on good cells and bad cells.
Right.
If you are starving cancer cells and then you hit them with chemicals, now they're already weakened, so they're going to be more susceptible in a sense. Or you could just keep starving them, from my opinion. But I'm not saying, again, aloe vera not being a cancer cure. If you're including it in your protocol, whether with chemotherapy or with other medical, systems, or whatever you're choosing to do, whether you're doing radiation or you're possibly just doing complete straight nutrition, it's one of those things where you do it with a doctor's supervision. You get checked every now and then, maybe do some, kind of scans or measurements or blood, checking to know what your numbers are and make sure you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's almost like, it's a medical food. Yeah, I mean, it can be considered a medical food. Yeah, it should be, if it's not. So, well, that's a really very good story. Now, I know that people who you said are familiar with using aloe vera for digestive issues, and particularly IBS, IBD, Crohn's, celiac, acid reflux, GERD, all these. It's helpful for those reasons, correct? Now, can you explain the mechanism that you talked about, the mannose, which is primarily, we're talking about Acemannan. Is this the one we're talking about right now?
Yeah, let's talk about it from outside of the body first, because this is where we've done more scientific research.
Right.
Meaning, imagine, and I guess I'm wearing the perfect color shirt here. Imagine this was a sunburn. And I took aloe, and let's say I just dipped my hand in the aloe, and then I went like this. And instead of rubbing it in, I'm just going to make a handprint and then take it off. Uh-huh. The next day, we're probably going to see a white handprint surrounded by the red sunburn.
That's crazy. I never thought of doing that.
Yeah, and the reason being is aloe vera cuts the healing time in half. It also has some, like anti-erythema type, properties where it's going to decrease redness and swelling and inflammatory responses. But it speeds the healing, cuts the healing time in half. They actually did research many years ago. I'm not a fan of this kind of research. I think the scientists should have used their own bodies, but they did them on rats. They took hot wrought irons, they burned them. Half the rats got aloe vera on the wounds, the other half did not. The group that got the aloe vera on it, their wounds healed in half the time. Now, let's equate this to the body and to the bowels. If you think about it, this is going to be an interesting way to think about the human body. Let's say that we looked at the human body as a squish bag. You know those squish bags where they have a hole in the middle and you can kind of, if I took I got my drumming shirt on now. So if I took a drumstick and I put the squish, I could keep on rolling it all the way to the end of the stick, take it off and do it on and just go round in circles. The reason our bodies don't do that, because we have that tube that, through our mouth all the way down to our anus, we have that tube going through our bodies.
Right.
But we have this skeleton that prevents our bodies from being able to do that, which is a good thing. But for the most part, it's the same tissue. You see, our skin eats and drinks, and it also excretes.
Correct. It's the largest
Just,
organ of your body.
yeah, and it's just like the bowels. The only difference is the bowels are inside our body. But if you think about it, when you eat something, your food, your drink is in that tube, which is technically sort of still outside your body. It's like that tube is like that outside your body on the inside of your body. But in order to really become part of you, it has to pass through that tube to get into your bloodstream and be carried to all the tissues of your body. Just like the skin. You know, when a doctor puts a patch of hormones on your skin, or a roll-on of hormones, or a pain patch where the drugs go through your skin into your bloodstream, it has to pass through the skin before it becomes a part of you, before it goes inside you.
Yeah, that's why we're very careful now when we tell people what you put on your skin is actually going to get absorbed. So you have to be careful even with, like, actually people that I work with. I'm like, take a look at your cosmetics and your hair products and all the things that you're putting on your skin. It's getting absorbed into your systemically.
I don't think that medical companies, cosmetic companies, doctors, even our, anatomy and biology classes taught us right about this, because we were taught that our skin was a protective barrier. We can't look at it that way anymore. We have to realize, yes, it's a protective barrier to some things.
Usually from viruses and bacteria, although if you have dry skin, they say it's more likely that they're going to enter. You're going to get infections.
Yeah, but the chemicals clearly can pass through the skin, just like the gut.
Yep.
So we have to think about what we put on our skin and recognize that they work both the same way. So now back to how does the aloe work to, if it can heal the skin. Remember, the skin and the gut being a very similar organ, we haven't burned the guts and said, okay, how does aloe vera work on them?
Well, GERD is kind of like burning the gut, huh? When you have all that acid reflux.
An ulcer is very much like inflamed skin, like a hot wrought iron burn on a rat.
In fact, when they look at it at a scope, it looks red. It looks inflamed. It has that appearance of what you would have outside on your skin if it was burned by acid.
Now, I always tell people it's not a cure for ulcers or inflammatory bowels, but it does increase the healing. It's a speed healer. Now, part of the cure is taking away the things that are irritating it and continuing to inflame it. Right. Consuming anti-inflammatory foods. You can continue to consume something like aloe vera. People like to use things like bone stock, or if they're vegan, vegetable stock, and things that are soothing and healing to the guts, as opposed to, well, we know that wheat has gluten in it, which is more inflammatory. Someone with bowel problems might want to avoid the inflammatory type foods, the things that are high in omega-6s. They might want to consume more omega-3 type foods. So,
yeah, even things that cross-react to gluten. So that's really good advice. So for those of you listening, so in a nutshell, aloe would soothe the intestinal lining in a very similar fashion as it would do to your skin, therefore speeding up the healing process, but not curing it, because if you continue to pour acid on your skin, you're going to continue to damage the skin. So it doesn't matter how much acid. If you keep going out in the sun and keep burning yourself, you can't keep putting aloe on it and think it's going to be all good. That's basically what we're trying to say. So, okay, so now, let's go into the next question. Infections. Now, I thought that was interesting when I was listening to one of your other podcasts with somebody who were talking about, and I was actually reading it myself in a journal. I actually did a blog. For those of you listening, I did a blog on my website. So go check out IC Healer, and I did a scientific blog on it, and I have a lot of references on there. But I was reading it has antibacterial and antifungal properties. Could that be due to Acemannan?
Well, I do believe that it ties in with that. When we think about foods that have sugars, for instance, glucose will ferment very quickly. Grape juice will turn to wine rather quickly. Aloe vera will ferment, but slower. So it, in a sense, topically does have some antimicrobial properties. It's not completely bacteriostatic, right. But it's not as efficient food for growing things in the sense of fermentation, if it makes sense.
Gotcha. And maybe upregulating the immune system also might be contributing to that.
Yeah, well, when we talked earlier about the macrophages secreting more tumor necrosis factor, interferon, interleukin, those things actually instruct the immune system to recognize foreign invaders so that it knows which ones to attack. So from that sense, yes, the immune system has a is stimulated in a sense.
So you can think of aloe as like your little messenger that's kind of, you're trying to fight in a war, body's trying to fight in a war, and it just needs a little help. And aloe comes in there and it's kind of like got the affinity for finding the pathogens and, leading the immune system to it like a messenger. Okay, that's a great way to look at it. So now moving on to nutrients, another thing I thought was really interesting. And actually, let me pull up, I'm going to share screens here because I got this chart here that shows the nutrients of aloe vera. And I was like, oh, this is important information to share.
And I'll say that I have never gotten them tested because in order to truly test aloe vera, and I've seen all those documents all over the internet, and I'm absolutely amazed. The only thing that we've tested for was vitamin B12 because we thought theoretically it might have B12 in it because sometimes it turns pink. We can't explain that. And sometimes it goes from pink to white. But it came out negative for the B12, but we didn't check for all the right versions because you have to check for methylcobalamin, cyanocobalamin, hydroxycobalamin. So when I see the nutrient profile of aloe vera, I am absolutely amazed. The science guy in me says, I want to see the proof and the laboratory results, and I've never taken it that far myself. I'm sure it's out there. But when I look at it,
journal that I got this from, but it says A, C, E, B1, B2, B3, B6 folate, choline. Whoa, that's a multi B right there. And then also zinc, magnesium, copper, calcium, manganese, chromium, selenium, potassium, sodium. So that almost tells me that this could be utilized in a cleanse or a fast when you're trying to starve your body of sugar and calories to promote autophagy without starving your body of nutrients so that you don't, malfunction while you're trying to achieve that. Do you think that this could be a good option for people who are trying to fast?
I use it when I fast. And it also has that, when you're stimulating your immune system, you're stimulating metabolism to some extent, which, when your metabolism is higher, you're burning fat, which is detoxing. So I choose to use it. And when I look at that nutrient profile and all the electrolyte minerals, and it's just like, wow, I want to really, someday I really want to finance, because you have to test for each nutrient individually. And, I want to really see it myself so I can say, yes, that is accurate and true, because it's amazing. It's truly amazing.
You can put a label on it if that's the case, so that people know what they're getting. Because that's one of the concerns I have with fasting when I recommend it to people, is I'm worried about them already being nutrient depleted, but I don't want to interfere with the goal of fasting. The goal of fasting is to keep insulin down. And from what I'm hearing, because this doesn't have that property of, increasing insulin, this could be a good fasting tool to do while you're fasting without promoting insulin. You could still get into ketosis with this, correct?
I believe so. Haven't ever tested that theory.
Okay. That would be really interesting, because I'm always looking for things to help people get through a fast, because, there's another product out there by Prolon. Have you ever heard of the fasting mimicking diet?
No.
It's a product that's supposed to help with promoting autophagy. It's a 5-day fasting mimicking diet, but you're eating bars and soups, but they're keeping the calorie and the protein and carbohydrate and fats down enough to promote autophagy. But I don't like promoting that because I always worry about like the oxalates that are in it, and people with bladder conditions have problems with oxalates in vegetables. And so I'm like, gosh, I wish there was something else. And then I thought bone broth. I'm like, no, bone broth increases histamine, and that can cause histamine problems. And then I saw this, and I'm like,
Yeah, I seen on I inherited our nutrition facts panel, which shows that a cup of aloe vera has 5 calories.
Okay.
So
5 calories.
when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, with all the thickness and everything that's in it, how is it possible, unless the carbohydrates aren't counted as, calories, aren't carbohydrate calories, which would make sense if we're not able to digest the mannose like we would glucose. I don't know enough, though, about this, and it's one of those things that I personally have to take to the laboratory myself and see the results to truly feel confident enough to make such a statement.
I would love to have that conversation offline with you, because I'd love to know like how many cups somebody can drink during fasting to still get the benefits of fasting, and how many calories they were getting, carbs, because there's that tipping point. So we'll definitely talk about that, because
I could tell you how much people can.
Yeah.
I can tell you how much people can drink in a day, because I've done it.
Okay, let's talk about that.
But I do believe there's a point to diminishing returns.
Okay.
When I'm supervising harvest and production, I like to, we have 8 checkpoints per day. And for me, I'm just used to drinking a full cup at a time, which is about, for me, 8 or 10 ounces or so. So at each of these checkpoints, I fill that cup to the top and I drink it so I can just experience how does it feel, how does it taste, what's the consistency, and make sure that the production is going according to my standards. And when I'm doing that, and I might do it, 4 or 5 days in a row, that's literally a half gallon a day for, 4 or 5 days in a row. And I do that, a few times a year, about 4 or 5 times a year.
And the gallon is behind you, right? Or is that a gallon?
It's funny. That's an empty bottle, which I didn't even know was there.
Yeah, no, it's a nice decoration. Is that a full gallon or is that how much?
This is a half gallon bottle, which it happens to be full of water right now because it's being stored. But
so you're doing that during those days, the whole thing?
Yes. Wow. Now, if we looked back a little further, there's a refrigerator with a bottle in it.
Yeah. Okay.
That one actually has aloe in it.
Gotcha. So that's a lot. So you're doing that whole thing for 4 or 5 days straight.
Yes. And it's now, remember, don't ever try that with another brand unless you're certain that the outer leaf components are not included in that product, because you're going to have some problems if they are. The outer leaf has a strong laxative effect, and it could be very cramping and dehydrating and work counter to what you're trying to accomplish. It could take you the other direction.
Okay. Is that like the stuff that people buy at the store, like George's? Is that one considered outer? I'm not even sure.
George's is, let me not talk about brands specifically.
Okay.
Without using names, let me talk about processes instead.
Okay.
I would say that ours is the least processed, the least filtered. That's why if I were to pour some in a glass, if I were to grab that bottle out of the refrigerator and pour it in a glass, you would see this like slimy waterfall kind of moving slowly, where I could almost like stop pouring it and it'd go back into the bottle. I'm
going to be doing that on Instagram later today.
Okay. Well, it's slippery and it's slimy and it's thick. Now, most brands, in fact, if you went to the International Aloe Science Council website, they have a tab, at least they did last time I checked, called Resources. And on that resources page is a video of what most other brands do, most other brands.
Okay.
And they all probably have some type of filtering process. And what that looks like is, imagine all of the fillets, instead of just going through a grinder and then getting chilled and going into the freezer. Imagine if they put them in this big stainless steel tank that had a big paddle homogenizing them, stirring them into this big slurry. And imagine they dumped in big bags of carbon and diatomaceous earth, like, 100 pounds of each, right, and stirred it up in this big carbon slurry and then put it through some kind of pressure filter to kind of pop out these little carbon cakes with all of the color, all of the solid materials type thing. They call that process decolorization and deodorization. Now, from my perspective, it's denutrientization, because it's taking out color and aroma, which taste, flavor, smell, color. These are nutrients. They come from nutrients when they're coming from a food product. Yeah. You wouldn't juice carrots and
till they're white.
And then run that juice through a carbon filter and have water come out and say, here. You wouldn't do that.
Right. Now, I mean, like, why breast milk is yellow because of the vitamin A content.
Yes. Yeah. So technically, if I were to do that with carrot juice and it came out rather clear and I drank it, technically I'm drinking 100% carrot juice because it came from carrots. Oh, now, I didn't dilute it. I didn't add water to it, but I did take stuff out and I changed it. So in a sense, it's a form of dilution by taking out the good stuff. My perspective on it. Okay. Other brands might have their own take and say it a different way. So when we look at the different brands out there, they're probably going to be somewhere between our brand and, if you can imagine, the thinnest brand out there, the one that shakes like water, the one that looks like water, the one that if you were blindfolded and you were to taste it in a glass and not know if you were drinking water or that particular aloe brand. We're all somewhere between those two brands. And it doesn't mean that the one on the opposite end of the spectrum isn't good, doesn't have benefits. It's just a different process that they use. And if you're that filtered, you could probably drink it in place of water, and you could probably replace 100% of your water intake with that brand. And, you know, point being is...
It's not a medical food at that point because you've done all this processing, correct?
Well, I wouldn't expect to have the same, excuse me, I wouldn't expect to have the same physiological benefits the more diluted it is.
Yeah, makes sense. It doesn't matter how much of it you're drinking. If it's not there, it's not there.
Yeah, if we look for like a definition of a superfood would be a food, I mean, all foods have some kind of physiological benefits where, you know, it biochemically interacts with our body. A superfood might have them to the extent where it's actually noticeable. I notice something different. I have more energy, clear minds. I feel things are healed, whatever it is. There are certain things we would consider superfoods. I believe aloe vera is one of those things, but I believe we can take it to a point where it's no longer really a superfood.
Of course. I mean, I think you can do that with even kale. You know, I think any food can be altered to the point where you're still, I love the example you said, you're still drinking carrot juice. And they can still label it as 100% carrot juice, those food manufacturers. But in reality, are you getting the therapeutic? But the same thing with supplements, Dr. Haley. I mean, the same thing is, you know, you can get, great examples, fish oil. You can get fish oil and follow what it says on the capsule, 1 a day. And then I'm like, well, that's not the therapeutic dose. The therapeutic dose might be 6. And what does that mean? That means that's the dose you need in order for it to change physiology in a body in a way that benefits you. So it's the same in this situation. You could drink aloe juice. If it's not real, you know, doesn't have the amount that you need for the purpose, then you're really, you know, you can do it, you'll enjoy it, but are you going to get the healing that you're trying to get? No. And then what ends up happening is you get frustrated. You say, oh, this stuff doesn't work. I knew it was just a scam. In reality, you're like, well, you weren't really getting the right amounts and you weren't even taking a good quality. At the end of the day, quality matters with everything. I mean, I always try to tell people this. It matters. I mean, you get what you pay for, usually. So, and this stuff, you know, it's a little on the more pricier side, but I have no problems with that because if it's giving me the benefits, it's giving your life back, you know, and you might be preventing cancer. So maybe we're not treating it because we can't say we are, but are we preventing?
Well, let me see. We're getting into the gray area, but I'm going to suggest when you make good choices in your life, you're preventing problems.
Yeah.
And when you make poor choices, you're inviting problems. So keeping it as simple as that, you know. The other thing, we talked about the spectrum of brands from not filtered to ultra filtered. The other thing we have to think about is what parts are going in those beverages. Okay. There is one brand that actually has aloe vera for different purposes. And it's worth noting that there's whole leaf aloe products that have gel and the external leaf. We're not really seeing so many products that are only the external leaf anymore because they have done research to show that that probably isn't the best thing for you. So I don't even know if they exist in the United States anymore. Probably not.
Okay. Is it the digestive issues that it causes?
Well, yes, because there were companies that were actually extracting the sap from the outer leaf.
Yeah.
And selling it for its laxative effect. And I believe they were turning it into capsules even. And you'll actually see videos on YouTube of aloe tapping, which is they would take the leaves off the plant, stack them up in a certain way, and let that sap drain into, you know, a container beneath it. And that's what they would take to the market to sell. And I think they're doing that in India, even to this day. And then the rest of the leaf, the part that we keep, they just discard, push it over in the pile, and it turns to compost. So the medicinal part they're looking for is that outer leaf laxative effect. Some brands are selling whole leaf aloe vera with the inner leaf gel, which is the healing part, it working synergistically with the laxative effect for people who would purchase that if they had constipation issues. I disagree with using a laxative for constipation. I don't think you're getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly.
So I think we want to heal the bowels and make sure you have enough, water in your diet, enough fiber, enough maybe fat, which is the lubrication. Are you chewing your food? Do you need digestive enzymes, probiotics, or cultured foods? We want to look and say, what's wrong with your diet? Why aren't your bowels working? What do we need to nurture your gut back to real health?
Yeah.
Probably not take laxatives unless you medically need to for a period of time until you get well. The same brand will carry a inner leaf only, which is the inner part of the plant. And the same brand also has an inner leaf gel. What's the difference between the inner leaf and the inner leaf gel? The inner leaf gel has a thickening agent added to it.
Oh.
Because remember, when you push it through that filter, you take out a lot of the solid materials and the colors and the aroma, and you end up with a thinner liquid that splashes. So we add some carrageenan into it or something like that to thicken it back up into a gel. That one, I wouldn't spend the extra money for the carrageenan. I would go with the inner leaf juice if I was going to get that brand. But those are some of the things to consider when you're saying, okay, what do I want in an aloe vera? I personally think you want a inner leaf gel, unfiltered, raw, probably be the best thing shipped frozen to you.
Thanks for clarifying that, because I used to get really confused in the grocery store when I would say inner leaf, I don't know which one I want. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that you clarified that part of it. But then you also said a very important word. It's raw. Explain that, please. What do you mean by raw?
Raw things are perishable and they're alive. When we cook something, let's talk about milk. Probably the first thing where they said we have to pasteurize this. Because if you imagine, back in before pasteurization, imagine the farmer out there milking the cow and, maybe the cow kicks the bucket over or something like that, and maybe even steps in it. And the farmer says, oh, here's a bad batch, and gives it a swirl and, dumps it out and starts over again. Not really understanding microbiology. So some people, E. coli or whatever, they get sick from consuming something that was not pasteurized. Well, let's pasteurize this to kill all the bad bacteria. And now eventually, let's even take it a step further and add preservatives, chemicals in there.
Well, that's for the shelf life too now you're looking at.
So all of this stuff kind of happened, and we started denaturing milk by cooking the proteins that are in it and everything else. We heat the things up. They started doing this ultra pasteurization. Milk went from being able to last a week to 2 weeks, and now you can even see it a month or more, the dates on it. When you cook something and take out the natural good bacteria, not the ones when the cow stepped in the bucket, then, after stepping in his poo pile, but the natural inherent bacteria, remember, grape juice turned into wine, cabbage turns into sauerkraut, and it's filled with this bacteria that is very probiotic and nurturing to your intestinal gut flora. It helps it stay in good balance and keep the pathogenic bacteria out. It's kind of like a survival of the fittest. And when you're filled with that good bacteria, it's hard for pathogenic bacteria now to even take over it. There was a scripture that was written many, many years ago, and it said, stop drinking only water, use a little wine. The next part's the important part that most people don't pay attention to. It said, for your stomach and for your frequent infirmities. You see, wine is a probiotic beverage, which made it good for the stomach, and probiotics are good for the immune system. So for your stomach and your frequent infirmities, I think most people use that to, justify, see, we're supposed to drink wine and, let's get loaded. That's not what it was.
It's not the resveratrol. Probiotics.
Yeah, well, it could be for the resveratrol too. I'm sure there's some benefits there.
but you can eat the grapes and get resveratrol, but you won't get the probiotics. So there you go.
Well, even resveratrol increases in fermentation, if I understand it correctly, which is kind of the result of a fungus that grows on the skin of the grape. So I would say it's all part of the process. It's taking a food like grape juice, fermenting it, turning it into a superfood with some new additional properties. Just like cabbage, which is a good food, but you ferment it, it becomes sauerkraut, a new, like more of a superfood with some new, better physiological, biochemical properties.
Say that because I grew up, my parents used to eat something called torshi, which is Persian. And in what it was these vegetables that were fermented. It was really sour and they would eat it with the meal. And I always look at them, I go, you're just eating broccoli or you're just eating cauliflower. What is this? And I'm like, oh, this is so nasty. And now I look back, I'm like, they're eating it with the meal. Go figure. Probiotics help with digestion. See, they knew.
Right.
Yeah. So
raw things, they cook it, and it's, from a perspective of manufacturing, it's actually cheating in a sense, because imagine that I'm making, applesauce, and, we're skinning apples and whoops, dropped one on the floor. Don't worry, we're going to pasteurize it. But we can still use those. We don't have to be clean on the front end.
Right.
Manufacturing facilities that are choosing to be raw, we have to be super, super clean to make sure all the pathogenic bacteria are out. And if there's natural bacteria in there, we want to leave them in place so that they can keep the pathogenic bacteria out.
Yeah. We
are required by law to put this label on there that says, something to the effect of, warning, this product is not pasteurized and, may be dangerous to your health. And if you drink it, you might die or something like that, especially if you're an infant or an elderly or have a compromised immune system. What's that all about? If it has pathogenic bacteria, that would be a true statement. Now, it just so happens that we test every single batch we ever produce, and we have never found pathogenic bacteria.
You guys heard that? They test every single batch. When you told me that the first time, that was really important for me to hear that.
Yes, it all goes to an independent laboratory, and we use one in Miami, Florida, and they give us the results of every batch. Never found pathogenic bacteria. It doesn't mean it couldn't happen. In fact, it doesn't mean that you couldn't, and this is, this is not aloe in here, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't open your own bottle and contaminate yourself, even if it was pasteurized and had preservatives. If you buy pasteurized milk and stick your fingers in it and contaminate it, guess what? It should probably have that label on it, because possibly it's contaminated and possibly drinking it would be hazardous to your health. It's funny, the FDA makes us put the label on it and not those that pasteurize it, because anything can be contaminated.
Now, speaking of that, because you just mentioned if someone puts their finger in there or if they drink it from the nozzle and they put their saliva, it can happen. What is the shelf life of it once it's open? I wanted to know that again. I know I asked you this because one time I bought it, left it open in the refrigerator, and it was like 8, 9, 10 days. It changed color, and I was like, "Ooh, can I still drink this? Like, what's recommended?"
Yeah, we can't go by the color, because even when it turns pink, raw aloe vera will turn pink. There's a video on my YouTube channel where I did a time-lapse video showing that pink aloe will actually turn clear again.
Yes, that's happened before.
So we can't really go by the color. And you can't really go by the taste, because remember, you talked about things being sour. Well, we could say that's the power of sour. Cabbage on your counter making sauerkraut in these jars. You chop it up and you add some salt and you scrunch it down and you squeeze it out. When it's like a wet sponge, it's ready. You stuff it in a jar, you leave it on your counter for about a week, and you have sauerkraut. Now, did it get old? Did it go bad? No, it soured and it became something different. So as you leave raw aloe vera in your refrigerator, the longer you leave it in there, the more different it's going to be. And there will be a point in time where you no longer want to drink it, just because, I kind of like the taste of old grape juice better. It has this, it tastes like wine, because that's what it is, right? And if it was capped tightly in the refrigerator, it actually turns into like a champagne. Aloe vera, when it ferments, does not taste better. I'm just going to throw it out there. It doesn't taste that good when it's raw, when it's just aloe vera. But when you ferment it, it really doesn't taste good. It doesn't mean it's going to harm you.
It's not bad for you. Okay, that's what I want to know. It doesn't taste good, but it's because I did have it one time after about 8 or 9 days, and I was like, ooh, this is weird. Should I be drinking this? But it's not going to hurt.
Yeah, and that taste difference may not have happened till 20 days later. Obviously it has to do with things like, did anything get into it? Did you leave it open and yeast from the air? What temperature is my refrigerator? A lot of things factor in how fast something ferments. But there comes a point in time where it changes quickly. And that jug of aloe that's all goopy when you shake it, one day is going to sound like water splashing in there, because the bacteria suddenly multiply so many times that it consumes all the mucopolysaccharides, breaking them down. And now you have, a water sound. It's kind of like that old question. What would you rather have? A penny that doubles every day for a month, or $1 million? A lot of people would jump at the $1 million, especially if they go through figuring out the first week that, a penny turns into 2 pennies, turns into 4 pennies, turns into 8, turns into 16, turns into 32, 64 cents, dollar. Well, by the end of the week, what do I have? $1.28? Well, at the end of the month, you're doubling millions. If you do the math, it's a pretty neat thing. Bacteria are much the same way. They're doubling. Not a big difference, but after so many doublings, we're doubling gazillions. Fermentation is happening much, much faster. And that could be at 10 days. It could be at 3 weeks. And it just means you're going to have a different product, a very probiotic, terrible tasting, not the reason you bought it. And if you want probiotics, there's much cheaper, better tasting options than fermented aloe vera. So we tell people.
You said that it consumes the mucopolysaccharides. So does that mean there's less of that? Yeah, there's less of the polysaccharides then,
right?
Correct?
Because the bacteria consumed it.
When you first open it, really, right?
Yeah, so what we tell people is when you first get it, if you want it to last a long time, go ahead and melt the whole bottle, pour it into smaller containers, put them back in the freezer to take out as necessary. And, you might just say, oh, well, I'm going to use this in 2 weeks. So let me just pour half of it in one other container and put the rest of it in my refrigerator for now. And that other one.
It arrives frozen. Can you thaw and refreeze?
Yes, you can. It's not how many times you melt it and refreeze it. It's how long it spends melted where the bacteria are multiplying.
Okay, so you guys hear, he said that you can do that because sometimes the jug's too big and it's sitting in the fridge for too long. So we can actually transfer it into things that are smaller, so you can thaw and freeze it again. Okay, that's good to know. I'm definitely. Do people put them in bags ever, or do they put them in?
We've had people, tell us about putting it in ice cube trays, putting it in bags. I do recommend, I would say this is actually a good use of plastic. Glass shatters, and aloe vera seems to expand bigger than water and have more pushing pressure than water does when it expands, and it breaks jars. Plastic has gotten its bad rap from probably bottled water. And if you think about it, these bottled water companies, they fill the bottles, they make the bottles, they fill them, they cap them. The bottles probably never had a chance to cure, because imagine how big the warehouse would have to be to make bottles and store them before they're going to fill them, say, a month later, for all those bottles to gas off, cure and gas off and get rid of the cap. So they're filling them too close to the time when they were made. And that gassing off is essentially leaching into the water. And I think that's where plastics got its bad rap. A company like ours, our bottles are made months before they're going to be filled. And, they're well cured.
Yeah, the polymer inside the plastic. Okay.
And we're filling it with cold liquid. What does cold do? It slows down the molecular activity.
Gotcha. So what should we use to store it, you said? The water bottles? Is that what you said?
Well, storage in plastic is good. And number 2, recyclable plastic is probably going to be your best bet.
Okay. All right. So you can store it in the freezer for how long?
Good question. It's funny. There was a company that for a while was in competition with us, if you want to call it that. And I was tracking their import records, and I knew where their storage facility was. And I remember when they decided to go out of business because they sold off their last frozen inventory that they had shipped in from overseas 5 years earlier.
Oh.
And people were buying it and drinking it.
Oh.
I think that's a little too long, but it's not like a bag of vegetables that has air in it where it's going to get freezer burned. If you fill up a bottle, you know, and there's this much air on top, you're going to get a little freezer burn, but actually you can fill it up to here. And then when it freezes, it's going to go up to there. So it's not going to really have that freezer burn. A year is very reasonable.
A year. Okay, good. All right. Because I just pulled out my last bottle from months ago and I'm like, ooh, okay, good. A year. That's good. So you guys can buy 8 packs and 16 packs. So just store it. That might be the way to do it. Okay, so let's see. A couple more questions. I had somebody say to me, well, I'm just going to fillet my own aloe vera plant.
You can do that. In fact, if I was to flip my camera around, you'd be looking out my window at hundreds of aloe vera plants.
Oh.
And I still choose to get it from my company. And, you know, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And you go through those plants quickly. I probably do have enough aloe plants for me and my family, but it'd be cutting it close without going to the main farm. We go through them quickly, especially my wife drinks a cup every day. You know, we start off and fill up our cups. So that's, you know, if you think about it, that's probably 3 leaves a day just for the 2 of us. And the kids are a little more sporadic on their aloe consumption, but they definitely are consuming it. That'd be a lot of trips to the field, a lot of filleting, a lot of grinding.
Yeah.
But it can be done, and it's probably better. Meaning if you have a good aloe vera plant and you grow it to maturity and you fillet it properly, you know, we have videos that show you how to do it the right way so that you're not getting the outer leaf aloe in there. Go for it. I guarantee if you do it though, you purchase a bottle of ours, you're going to realize that it makes more sense to get it from us, but have at it. And it's great to have it raw, fresh filleted right from your own aloe vera plant. If you can keep up with it and you got a aloe farm, go for it.
No, not for me. But I did the same thing with ghee. Like I buy ghee. I'm like, I know I can make it and I can do a huge vat of it. And I talked about it a few times with Terry. I said, should we just make our own ghee? And I'm like, nah, not for me. But you know, again, that's something that you can do if you choose to. Another thing somebody else asked me was, what about the pills? I know that some people like to use the pills. And I did my research and I did think that there was only one that I know that was comparable to its Acemannan activity, which was Aloe. I think that's the name of that. You can't buy them. They supply them to other supplements. So you have to know that the supplement that you buy. And actually, there's only one that I know uses Aloe. It's actually Glycolife, which is Jeff, my friend Jeff, who sells the Zeo Boost to all my clients. He has an aloe pill that has Aloe. He actually uses Aloe in a lot of his blends. So that's what he does. He uses it. So what are your thoughts on freeze-dried aloe?
If I didn't have access to the real thing, and I did have access to that, and I wanted the benefits of things like Acemannan to support my immune system, I would absolutely get it. I take powdered greens almost every day.
You sell one?
Yes, we actually manufacture one. And it's not that I don't eat enough fruits and vegetables every day, but it is kind of like an insurance policy, and it's very convenient for me because in a single scoop, I have all the colors represented with a big variety of fruits and vegetables. And it's also probiotics and has digestive enzymes in it, which are some additional benefits. So to me, it's a convenient way to get more nutrition. What's better, real fruits and vegetables or the powder? The real fruits and vegetables, and I get a ton of those as well. So to me, I would not shy away and say, no, that's a bad product. If we know that it's coming from a reputable source and it's the inner leaf parts, we don't want the outer leaf parts with the laxative effect. I know I'm getting my Acemannan and support my immune system. And I would probably want it to be the whole leaf. I probably wouldn't want it like Acemannan isolate. I'd probably want it to be the whole food.
Gotcha.
Juiced and dehydrated.
Take a lot of the pills though, don't you? The dosing probably has to be pretty high.
If you were going to, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an option for people who can't tolerate drinking this. I mean, that means that's not for everybody. And then the other thing is with the pill is you can take it while you're traveling.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay. And I guess the last question here I have here, well, two more. One more is certified organic. Is it, or does it need to be?
When it comes to aloe vera, first let's talk about what chemicals are used in growing aloe vera. None. Aloe vera grows really good in lime rock rich environments. And the truth be told, pretty much all of the aloe companies are getting their aloe from one of a handful of farms. There's only, there's 4 big farms supplying the United States. We just contracted with one of those farmers to grow our plants on a certain parcel of land and then use our equipment and process according to our standards on their processing facilities, which we happen to go and supervise on. But none of it needs anything. And then the other thing where people use chemicals is in to keep bugs away. Aloe vera does that naturally as this very bitter outer leaf. So pretty much all aloe is grown organically.
Gotcha.
Now, being grown organically and processed organically would be 2 different things, because there's plenty of processing agents and preservatives and things that are added to aloe. But for the most part, most products are going to be organic, even if they're not certified. We are not certified organic. What do we use? And we don't use anything in the field. We use rakes and hose to pull up the weeds, and we actually will put those on top of the aloe plants to help protect them from the sun.
That was just something that came up, but I just wanted to clarify that. And then the last one is, for people who are going to order, how is it shipped? Because I think they ship. And do you ship international? That's the other thing.
We do. We ship all over the world. This year we've shipped to Ireland and UK and lots to Canada, and Puerto Rico is not really international, but we ship there. We ship a lot of places, and it's going to Hawaii and mostly United States. So we have that down. But when it comes, I'm gonna appeal to people on their green side here now. Hopefully, there's options when you go to our website, and you will notice we've lowered the price in 10 years by offering volume discounts for a reason. You can imagine if this was a bottle of aloe and I was going to ship it to you all by itself, it's probably going to need some dry ice. But if I had another one next to it, they kind of keep each other company and keep each other cold. And if I ship 4 together, it does even better. Now, if I ship 1 bottle, 2 bottles, or 4 bottles, my packaging costs are still the same for all of those. We're going to use the same amount of styrofoam, whether I'm shipping 1, 2, or 4, maybe just a little bit more styrofoam for 4, but it's going to cost me the same. So I'm able to lower my costs by shipping more to you, but I don't want to ship styrofoam. We even have an 8-pack, which the costs go up a little more on the styrofoam side, packaging a little bit more, but it's much more cost effective from a packaging standpoint. So we pass those on to you.
8 packs.
You can do that. We don't want to be shipping styrofoam every time. We hope that if you try us at the smallest online order of 2 bottles, and when you decide that it's for you, consider the bucket. What's a bucket?
Okay.
We put 4 gallons and 10 ounces of aloe vera in a bucket. It leaves our facility frozen. We don't use styrofoam. We want it to melt on the way to you because you want to open that container up and distribute it into 9 of these bottles.
Gotcha.
And then refreeze them yourself.
Okay.
No styrofoam required. We're not going to put styrofoam on the mountain. When you're done with these bottles, why is this bottle full of water? Because what I would recommend is when you empty a bottle that you put a little water in it, shake it a couple times, dump it out, do that 2 or 3 times, fill it with your tap water. This is the water that we wouldn't drink it. It's your city municipal tap water that has chlorine in it that you're not going to drink, because chlorine, the purpose is to kill, right? But it will have its purpose while it's in this bottle to prevent things from growing. And then the next time I get a bucket, we're going to take this out, dump it out, maybe rinse it with some filtered water, getting it ready to be used again. So the buckets are a much greener way in that you're continuing to use the same bottles. You're not getting styrofoam with every shipment. And you get a nice bucket, which always has good reusable purposes.
Okay, so if I were to recommend order, you can order like in 2, 4, 8, whatever you want. You save the buckets. When you're done, you rinse them out with tap water, fill it up with tap water, just to store it. Then you're gonna get your order a bucket, which is how much is in it again?
A bucket has enough to fill up 9 of those half-gallon bottles.
9. Okay, good. So then
And
if I did an 8 count, sorry to interrupt. If I did an 8 count, because I'm about to do this. If I did an 8 count and if I did an 8 count and I put those aside, the next one I would order would be a bucket. And when I'm pouring, I'm going to defrost it, right? Because it would have to be defrosted. When I'm pouring it into the buckets, do I need like a funnel so it doesn't spill all over the place?
on our website, we have 4 options when purchasing a bucket. Some people get the bucket on their first order, so they need 9 empty bottles with it.
Oh.
So we can send 9 empty half-gallon bottles and caps. So one option is just a plain bucket. Another option is with the bottles. Another option is with 3 tools that you'll use in that process: a bucket opener, a big funnel, a big food grade BPA-free funnel, and a skimmer, because believe it or not, one of the problems we have is the aloe will separate, the pulp will clump up, and you'll want to skim out that pulp, put it in a blender to redistribute it, and put some in each bottle.
Oh, that comes with your kit?
Yes. So those, yeah, and we charge $15 for those 3 tools on top of the bucket. We charge $1 for each bottle, so the cost doesn't go up much. And those things are all, the bottles and the kit are reusable, of course.
Oh, nice.
So if you get all of that, then the next time you'd only get the bucket. Well, what's the 4th option? The 4th option is the bucket and just the kit without the bottles. Why would you get that? Because some people want to save $15, so they don't get the kit the first time. And then they get the bottles in the bucket and they should say, we should have got the kit.
Okay, I might do that because I don't know if I want to deal with opening it and doing all that right now. Busy studying for a board exam. So, okay,
I know all about that.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll just get the 8. But I like the idea of getting the tools, because I was wondering about that when I was watching one of your YouTube videos, but I'm not sure how you do that. But then you're giving us the tools, so we're good. And the video you would demonstrate how to do all that.
And full disclosure, on the video, I used an oil funnel, okay? We don't do that. We don't use oil funnels. We use BPA-free funnels that are food grade, but I made a video because I had to get it out there so I can teach people how to do it. Yeah. Don't use an oil funnel.
Okay. All right, well, this was fabulous. Thank you for taking the time again to meet with me. And this is on our Facebook page, guys. So if you didn't get to watch all of it, it's going to be there. I'm going to put it on my YouTube page, and I'm going to also put the link of where you can purchase this. I'm about to place my 8-pack again. I am excited. I have a bottle downstairs, and with my last one, I'm about to do an Instagram feed, and I'm going to just watch me pouring it, because I tell you what, it is quite an experience. And I actually sometimes will put my supplements in it too. Like I might put like I use like different drops, like herbal drops, and sometimes I'll put that to kind of, I was watching a video that says it helps absorb the supplements better too. So, well, thank you so much.
Mandy, thank you for having me. I had fun.
Yeah, you can check out his website too. And if, he's always available. If you have any questions, he's always available. He's been so helpful for my clients. Like people have actually directly called him. So if you have any questions, he's really accessible. And thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.